Hey, this is Notser, and we're in the Tier 8 Premium German aircraft carrier Graf Zeppelin on the map Estuary. I wanted to take this opportunity to give my send-off to not only the AP bomb Graf Zeppelin, which is incredibly powerful, and yes, I am zoomed in on the Stukas. I wanted to try and hear the siren. Definitely wasn't there, unless I'm deaf. But I also wanted to take a little bit of a last look at the RTS design and give some commentary on all of this. I know Wargaming had a very short summary of why they felt like it necessary to replace the RTS gameplay, and I felt like they could have done a better job of explaining exactly what is powerful about the carrier. And one of the most glaring aspects of the carrier is the vision game. It is so incredibly easy to gain intel for your team as a single person. You can go around the map at 3 times the speed of any other ship in the game, and you could do this with 5, 6, 7 sources of intel. You basically could keep the entire enemy team lit up. And I know that's what you do, but that's also incredibly unhealthy for the game. The fact that every single person could be spotted and an enemy is allowed to fire on you without having to consider the vision game at all is ridiculous, and it should never have been that way. It's very similar to World of Tanks. In World of Tanks, you have to have vision. People hide in bushes. People hide just because of distance. And if there was something that had a global presence that could just keep everything spotted, well, it wouldn't matter about hiding. It would be see, shoot, and then ask questions later. And that's not really fair in an environment like this, where targets are drawn in and drawn out. It feels really cheesy to have such an easy time. There's enemy DDs that have no way of dealing with your vision. They have absolutely no AA protection. And I always felt that this was probably the most powerful aspect of the carrier. The fact that the carrier just did this for free. Didn't have to expel fuel, didn't have to risk the aircraft at all. It was incredibly frustrating. And you're a DD that's designed to limit the vision of the enemy, try and get on a flank and punish the enemy who are maybe bunched up or camping or anything like that. The carrier completely null and voids that. You have no way of dealing with it at all. And that was the most despicable thing to me. It just the fact that the carrier literally can just press a button and almost immediately you have the squadrons flying off to that area at 3 times the speed of any ship in the game. It was brutal. It was absolutely brutal as a DD with the vision game itself. This is probably the most frustrating part about it, is just the fact that he could just fly around and look for targets that were either concealed or recently concealed. They are camping behind an island, and absolutely, I feel like camping behind an island is super cheesy too, but it's just too easy for a single carrier to gain so much intel that, you know, they might as well spot literally every target. And oh yeah, we're gonna just go in and delete this battleship real quick. 22,000. Second squadron takes him out. Third squadron attacks the corpse. Completely overkill at that point. And while I'm doing that assassination attempt, I'm also scouting the enemy Gajimata, because that's what happens in an RTS. You have the ability to control multiple sides of the map. That's actually encouraged. And it's a vital skill of pretty much every RTS ever conceived. Fog of War, you use your units, you gather intel, you form a strategy, you counter, and you win. That's basically what RTS is. That's what, like, 99% of StarCraft games entailed whenever I watched it competitively. And that's because that's what you're supposed to do. So having an RTS design that maybe limits that or takes that out of it, it's no longer an RTS. It's something different. It's a completely different game when that particular part is removed. And, you know, some people might say, well, just limit the vision of the squadrons. That's not fun for them. You're basically a bat flying around. You can't see anything at all. or limit the number of squadrons you can have, but don't limit it to one because one is so stupid. Okay, what do you limit it to? 2? 2, you can still do the same thing. 3? 3 is honestly pushing it. That's too much. But even 3 squadrons, there is no effort for an RTS player. It's too easy with 3 squadrons. Well, maybe you turn them into hero classes, similar to like Warcraft 3, where you've got 1, 2, maybe 3 units that have a lot of abilities attached to them, and you're forced to control and juggle all that. Well, I mean, then the entire design changes completely. How do you control each unit separately? Is there a UI element that shows up on the screen whenever you select a unit, and then you have the abilities associated with it? Right, it gets really convoluted very quickly. And I feel so bad for this guy Yamada, but this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to punish him, and my teammates are fulfilling that. It's so easy to hit targets once you've learned how to aim. I really don't know that anything that encourages and gains vision is balanced. I don't think it could ever be balanced. You know, with a destroyer, you have the risk that you'll run into the radar death ball that is so prevalent everywhere, where you've got 2 and 3 radar ships that are layering on top of each other, keeping you spotted the entire time. This is basically that, just in a more casual setting. It's just as frustrating, it's just as unfair, just players don't ever really run into it. We just did 45,000 damage to the hood, and we expelled no effort whatsoever. Now, that's because of AP bombs, for sure, but it's still ridiculous, right? It's just not fun. It's not fun to be the target of a carrier, and I am absolutely someone who is very familiar being a target. If you are playing in your carrier, one of a many different strategies that you could attempt to do is you could attempt to keep the best player on the enemy team spotted, harassed, until the end of the game. And it's so easy for the carrier to go and focus a single target that it feels really personal. Absolutely personal. And a personal play is so much more damaging than a play that is, I'm not actually looking to target you specifically. I'm just looking to win the game. I feel like a carrier can definitely encourage, especially the RTS design, can definitely encourage this feeling that, like, the game hates me. It is a class and a play style that is so punishing to certain players because of the decisions they make or the decisions of the enemy carrier. And the only person that could possibly help you is another carrier. And maybe that carrier can't help you anymore, or they're too busy doing something else on the other side of the map, right? It really gets into the 2 commanders are having a battle, and then you have peons that are being moved across the map. It doesn't really matter if they're good or bad or their decisions are sound. It's going to be decided by the 2 carriers, and it's just who outlasts who ends up making the right choice, who gets the lucky bomb drop that wipes out the hood versus requiring 10,000 more damage to the team, right? It's just too reliant on systems that are unhealthy. So we've got scout potential. That's one thing they wanted to target. The other thing that Wargaming wanted to get rid of was the Alpha Strike. Alpha striking is a tried and tested tradition of aircraft carrier commanders. Since the very dawn of existence, they have been one-shotting ships that have been innocent in their endeavors, maybe just trying to sail away, protect themselves. The carrier doesn't care. The carrier is brutal, and the carrier has always been brutal. The jet fighters of the Midway torpedo squadrons, the 12 torpedoes that could never be avoided, and they were always dropped precisely at point-blank range. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. We got the AP bombs of the Germans, where just wiping out ships left and right with no effort whatsoever. It's really bad, the Alpha Strike, so they've got to stop that. And that's one of the things that they want to focus on. They are focusing on Scout, Alpha Strike potential, and they wanted to make the game more engaging. And you know what? I think that every single issue they have with the carrier is, at least on the surface, being addressed. They're limiting the squadron to 1. I know that's disappointing, but the gameplay itself is going to be healthier for everyone else. You're not going to feel like you're commanding so much for your team that it's very important that you hit your marks and play effectively. That's one of the things that kills carriers. Nobody wants to play a class and learn a class that is so important that it decides the game. Almost 80% of the time. I think every single ranked battle I played, it was decided by the carrier. And you know what? That doesn't feel good for anyone. Every single player probably feels like, well, this was mediocre or meh at best. There's really not a lot of counterplay that's offered to the player. And if there is counterplay, it's not for them. It's for the carriers to go against each other. They need to move this system away from this design. It needs to be more fair. It needs to feel like everyone matters and it's a contribution effort rather than a single person dominating the intel, the damage, all that aspect of the game. The only thing that the carrier can't do is capture bases. And he could even do that if it was a super skilled carrier and it was brazen. It could move forward and risk the ship. But it is so obvious this is an issue. Now, another issue that is very obvious is the commander skills. And Wargaming really didn't talk about this a lot. In fact, they sort of tried to avoid it. They were talking about, well, we want to make sure the core gameplay feels good before we balance that or change it. Well, Wargaming, we need a guarantee that you are going to be changing the commander skills significantly, because I feel like it is so unfair to the carrier how the commander skills are set up. There's probably, 10 skills for and against carriers, at least, in the commander skill tree, and a lot of players, when they know there's a carrier in a game, will min-max that to the nth degree, to the point where it's a no-fly zone, carrier can't do anything. That's stupid. We've got to move away from the commander skills and the modules that punish carriers more than any other. Right? If I buff the range of my AA to a point where it's a no-fly zone and they have no chance of getting close, I don't even have to use defensive fire or anything like that, it's gone too far. There's too many buffs in the game that go against the carrier, and this is why it's a feast or famine. Some clan battles, you'll probably wipe out every single enemy ship without any effort, and then other games, you'll have no way of getting anywhere close to the enemy. They'll be fully buffed up with anti-air, and it will suck. It will absolutely suck. And this needs to be addressed, Wargaming. I know you're just talking about the gameplay, and I know that you are trying to talk in very vague terms so you have the chance to make adjustments. And I get it. People hold game developers down on things they say years after, and it's a useless endeavor. There are so many things that are in motion, but we need a guarantee that you are not satisfied with the commander skills, and there will be significant change to reduce the influence the commander skills and modules have over the carrier gameplay. It has to be one of the core features. You can't put in all of these systems and still allow players to min-max their AA protection to the nth degree that there is no counterplay available. You can't do that. Does defensive fire remain the same design? If it on average takes 60 seconds for a squadron to successfully attack, well, that's going to average outside of defensive fire's effectiveness. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. I would love to have an idea of what Wargaming is thinking about when they are going to look at each aspect. Not just like, oh, well, scouting's an issue. This is your game. This is any developer's game. And developers consistently love to conceal what they're doing. For whatever reason, they love to be super vague, even though they have a roadmap years in advance of what they're actually doing. I'm sure that Bismarck really enjoyed getting one shot from my AP bombs. Felt really fair. Carriers have just always felt just unfair, just weird. They've just never felt like they were well planned out. Maybe they were, and maybe something significant changed down the line. I have no idea. Maybe they felt like they had to add in more systems, more features to get players to invest in modules and commander skill. And one of the things that they felt they could do is add a ton of carrier stuff because carriers were inevitably going to be a dominating factor. They put in a lot of systems to counter way back in the day when you could have 1 or 3 carriers on one team and no carriers on the other team, right? Some crazy situations that, honestly, Wargaming, that was probably the most unhealthy thing you could have done, is set up a system where we really didn't know what to expect and design things around that version of the game that we didn't know what to expect, right? It's really unfortunate that a lot of systems were designed around a system that wasn't fully understood. And hopefully this new system will allow Wargaming to fully understand exactly what they need to do. That's my hope. I am always excited when I see a developer take an opportunity like this and say to themselves, this is a really big issue, and we must treat it as a really big issue. Regardless of where you sit, for or against carriers, it's a really big issue. It is the biggest issue in the game. Their existence, the balance around it, what they offer to the game. We need to get this right. If we get this right, this game is going to be set up for a lot of success, in my opinion, because all the classes feel unique, they feel different, they feel fun. I want it to expand, I want it to be successful, and boy, 23 fun and engaging citadels levied on the enemy, 2,100 base XP. I'm sure everyone enjoyed it. Now, of course they didn't. This is it. I want carriers in every game. Whatever the design requires, whatever the balance takes, they deserve to be there. I hope this was interesting. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you next time.